Not half bad. Coldest take you've ever heard incoming? Anime does not translate well to live action. We don't need to run through the list of truly awful examples. I think at this point it's a well-established fact of life. It doesn't mean you can't do it, it just means you probably can't do it. But as the saying goes, practice makes perfect, and Netflix has had a lot of practice when it comes to these things. And to go ahead and spoil the conclusion, I think they might have pulled it off this time. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, I think it's important to establish my own relationship with One Piece. Never watched the anime, haven't touched the manga. All I know is a handful of meme clips and the 4Kids opening song.
Here's how the story goes. We find out about a treasure in the Grand Line, there's no doubt.
I did know about the sword dude and the chick with the chesticles that became bigger spectacles as the years went on, but yeah, I'm not a One Piece fan, and I'm not gonna claim to be. Which means I won't feel a need to compare things to the manga or the anime, and it's probably for the best. One Piece follows Monkey D. Luffy on his quest to be king of the pirates. He starts with only a legacy straw hat and a can-do attitude, as he travels around a strange new world looking for a crew, a ship, and a legendary trove of pirate treasure, all kept in one piece. It's an incredibly simple premise that has so much potential for adventure and seafaring shenanigans. Larger-than-life pirates and inescapable military, scary monsters and weird creatures. You can always count on the show to give you something strange to look at, and it doesn't feel the need to point out how strange said things are. One of the biggest complaints I tend to have with any adaptation is that brand of millennial writing that plagues so much of modern media. I don't want to hear a character who has lived their whole life in a weird world say, "Ah, geez, this sure is weird." They don't do that here. The eccentricities of the world are taken as commonplace. People wearing animal ears and talking through snails, just a thing that happens. And I like that. Helps me get immersed in the world. Now, the writing itself isn't anything amazing. It's pretty standard action comedy stuff, like what you'd find in Marvel movies. But we're talking like maybe Phase 2 Marvel, okay? Not the new stuff. All of the main players get enough screen time for you to understand them on a basic level, but I think the show suffers most from too many characters with too little time to spend on all of them. It's only 8 episodes, and while they're each an hour a pop, the show shuffles back and forth between Luffy and his crew, Kobe and the Marines, and a few too many villains. Obviously, this is just season 1, so this will probably be fixed over time, but judging by the pacing of the show, it may still be around in season 2. What I mean is that things progress very quickly, which does keep things from getting stale, but it makes certain character interactions feel like they happen too fast. Like they already know that you know certain character traits and motivations, so we're just not going to spend as much time as we probably should to cover all the bases. That's bound to happen when you condense 60 episodes into just 8. I think the character that suffers the most from this kind of pacing might be Luffy. He's supposed to be the main character, but more often than not, he's just kind of there while we explore the backstories for the various members of the crew. I get that he's a pretty simple guy with a pretty simple dream, so we don't need to spend too much time with him, but he ended up feeling like he was just tagging along in his own show. I was much more interested in the edgelord, or the French dude, or even the girl boss. It doesn't help that I'm not the biggest fan of the guy playing Luffy either. Everyone else felt like characters, but he felt more like a guy playing a character. Does that make sense? I don't know, something just felt off about his performance, like he was trying too hard to ham up the whole wide-eyed, naive adventurer thing, which made it feel disingenuous. But now let's talk about how the show looks. If you told me this series had a higher budget per episode than Game of Thrones, I'd believe you. Some of the time. Generally speaking, the show looks pretty good, but there are way too many sequences that resonate that shot on a soundstage energy. Like the characters are just mapped out on a floating prop lost to the void of space and time. Kinda takes you out of the moment. The bigger issue, though, might be the strange fascination with close-ups. Originally, I thought this might be a budget thing, like keep the camera close so we don't have to design more backgrounds than we need to, but it just happens so frequently, even while the characters are in well-put-together set pieces, that I'm guessing it's a stylistic choice, one that I'm not too fond of. There's also some weird compositing going on in certain locations, like the Marine Base HQ, that make things look really fake. Then there's the CGI for Luffy. I'm not gonna say it's terrible, but sometimes they get a little too bold with it.
Oh, that's real nice.
I'm not convinced stretchy technology has advanced since the first Fantastic Four movie, and since Luffy's main power is him stretching around all over the place, you really start to wonder if it was a mistake to bring this thing into the third dimension. And when the show doesn't linger on these effect-heavy shots, they're fine. But the problem is that it does tend to linger. Putting aside the CGI, the makeup and practical effects for all of the characters are both pretty solid. The fishmen that show up in the second half look great. They could have easily just been cursed CGI creations, but instead, they went practical and only used the CGI in bursts during the fight scenes. Now, speaking of the fight scenes, they can either look pretty goofy or go extremely hard. If the fight involves Zoro or Sanji, it's amazing. If not, hit or miss. As for how the human characters look, I think the show did as good a job as it could have done. There's something of a spectrum when it comes to bringing anime characters into live action. At the low end, you have something like Dragon Ball Evolutions, which tried to make the designs more realistic and ended up making characters who looked nothing like who they were supposed to be. Is that supposed to be Bulma? I mean, she wears a bunch of different outfits, I guess that's fine, but where's her blue hair? Oh. Okay. Then at the high end, you have something like those Fullmetal Alchemist movies, which tried to make the designs as faithful to the source material as possible, which made everything feel like cosplay. It's not that cosplay is bad, it's just that it serves a different purpose. When you're adapting something into a movie or a TV show, you will need to change some stuff to fit with the medium, otherwise, it's gonna look fake. And for the most part, One Piece strikes a good balance between realism and authenticity. We keep the colored hair, but it's not glued in place. The designs aren't one-to-one, but they're close enough that you can tell who's supposed to be who. Now, I did say I'm no One Piece fan, but even I know Oda's style is very distinct. The way he draws characters, you just cannot perfectly translate that into live action. Crazy and exaggerated designs are right at home in animation or manga, but live action can't really replicate that. So I think it's for the best the show decided to lean a little more towards realism, since that's the nature of the medium. I'm still not convinced live action adaptations for anime or manga are a good idea. Not everything needs to be adapted to be complete, and there are so many aspects of these stories that will get lost in translation between the various mediums. When Netflix announced this adaptation, I immediately wondered to myself, who is this even for? Were the fans of the anime or the manga just demanding a live-action version? In my experience, most anime and manga fans like anime and manga precisely because they are not live-action. But as I watched the show, I started to realize why it exists. It's to pull in people like me, people who know of One Piece but never got around to watching or reading it because it's a lot. Live action also has broader appeal than animation, so if you make a live action version that streamlines the early section of a series that's been going on since the 90s, you'll probably rope in a great many people that wanted to experience One Piece but just couldn't bring themselves to make the plunge. And if that was the goal, then I think it may have worked on me. Part of me kind of wants to check out the anime or the original manga and see what I missed now that I know I do sort of like it. I'm not saying the show is amazing. I'm not even saying it's great. I'm saying it's fine. And when every other live-action anime adaptation is straight up garbage, just being fine is fine by me. You know, I didn't even watch the live-action Bebop or Death Note. I wonder if I should now. Probably not. Well, until next time, Ave Maria, Deus Vult, and maybe the real One Piece was the friends we made along the way. Can you imagine if that's how it ended?